Welcome back to another episode of From the Trenches, where myself and my colleague James Boyle get together and bring you behind the scenes on what we're working on in the business and with clients at Plan First Wealth. Hi, James.
How's it going, Richard?
Good. My my in-laws are here, so they are helping with childcare. Didn't have to do the school run yesterday, which was great.
I did not know that. That's good. Is it holiday related with Thanksgiving coming up? Or
No, that's just a coincidence. They actually leave before Thanksgiving, but they are here for a week, and it's great. Yeah, kids are absolutely loving it. Kate and I are kind of loving it, and we are heading into New York this weekend for a weekend of doing what we want to do, when we want to do it, how we want to do it, and I cannot wait.
any plans?
Oh yeah, eating a lot, various places.
Smart.
Yeah. So that's good. What about you?
We're deep into holiday season now. We've got all the seasonal decorations up. Can't believe how quickly it's coming up on us.
Isn't it not sacrilege to do that before Thanksgiving?
You know, I've tried to make that argument in my household, and it hasn't gone over well. My wife has overruled me. So
You've been vetoed.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I know what that feels like. Right. Well, so for any long-time regular listeners, James and I are making a slight change to this show. We are going to now try and pick one question that we've either been asked by someone, by a listener, or what we are encountering in the wild with our clients or with prospective clients, and we're going to try and answer one burning question that people are asking us and people want to hear answers to. So today we're going to talk about PCLS. For anyone who's the uninitiated, I'm talking about the 25% pension commencement lump sum, tax-free lump sum, or you can now take it as an income or periodic payments from a UK pension. And we're doing this for two reasons. One, because, teaser alert, this is actually our last From the Trenches under We're the Brits in America. This podcast is going through a revamp. It's not going away. It's going through a revamp. I'll tell you more about that at the end. But this is our last purely British-focused one. So I thought we'd do a very British-focused question. And second of all, we recently did a webinar on UK and US pensions, retirement accounts. And the last half hour was just a torrent, I would say a torrent, right, James, of PCLS-related questions. And that is a theme of our lives.
it is the number one question we get asked, I would say. And it's the sort of billion-dollar question that generates a lot of interest. Rightly so, right?
Well, I'll tell you what, right? Why don't you frame the question? What is the question that I'm referring to?
So the core of the question here is, I want to take my pension commencement lump sum, my 25%. Is that tax-free in the U.S.?
Right. So just for if anyone's wants, like, what are these two talking about? If you have a UK pension, let's call it a SIP, or maybe it's a company pension, stakeholder pension, whatever, right? Maybe you even have a defined benefit, final salary pension. You are going to get an income from that, and that income's taxable. But UK pensions have a feature called PCLS, Pension Commencement Lump Sum, and you're entitled to 25% up to some limits. $1 million, just over $1 million, or 1.25 million if you have protection. 25% of that, so 250 grand or 312, you can take 25%, and in the UK, that is tax-free.
Such a key little addendum there, right? In the UK, it's tax-free.
Yeah. And everyone's wondering, this has been all over the news in the UK recently because the UK is losing its mind in the run-up to this current budget, and there's been a lot of speculation about UK pensions being attacked again because they have been a popular target. But recently, the government came out and basically said no, they wouldn't be messing with this particular feature, which is good because this is a long-standing feature of UK pensions, and a lot of people have done a lot of financial planning on the basis and the expectation of receiving this 25% lump sum. People pay off mortgages with this. So it's a critical piece of UK financial planning. But we're not in the UK.
It's so embedded.
It's so embedded.
It's so embedded that I think, that feeds into expats when they come here, thinking about what are the broader implications.
Reasonably so, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's reasonable. It's reasonable to assume if you go to the UK with a Roth that they're going to respect that. It's reasonable to think if I have an ISA in the UK and I come to America, they're going to respect that. It's reasonable. It's wrong. The US does not respect that, but it's reasonable. I think it's reasonable to say if the UK provides for this feature, why wouldn't the US respect it? But it's not that simple. As all things US, it's not that simple. And we are not in the UK where it's crystal clear. We are in the US where it's less clear. And with all things kind of cross-border, it comes down to the tax treaty. And well, I'd love it if everything was crystal clear in the tax treaty. But there is ambiguity. And that ambiguity leads to a range of possible outcomes.
Is it fair to say that there is no one answer, right? As a preview, there's no clear, direct answer from the IRS on this issue.
I think so. But look, honestly, there is actually an answer from the IRS.
Mm.
There is actually a memo or communication somewhere out there saying the IRS believe it's taxable under whatever treaty and why. But that's not law. Law is when it's set down as a law in Congress. That's never going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Congress, FYI, are never going to make laws about UK pensions in America. That's why we have the treaty. So you're relying on it going to court one day and the court setting a precedent. Well, that hasn't happened yet. Maybe one day it will happen. In the interim, we have the interpretation of the treaty and IRS guidance. And the IRS has issued guidance years ago that they consider it to be taxable under this particular article. Now, all tax advice, well, first of all, that's not law. They can say it's a position in these memos or whatever it is, but it's not law until it's actually becomes an act or is set a precedent in court. So it's not law, it's their interpretation. And a lot of really good professional cross-border tax advisors, in my experience, believe there is a case against that position, a supportable case. And that's where we are.
In other words, a case to be defended that the PCLS, the 25%, could also potentially be treated as tax-free in the U.S.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes, this ambiguity frustrates the hell out of expats in this position. They want a clear yes or no. And there frankly isn't one. There's maybe the IRS thinks so, etc., etc. And I would say the best thing would be an unambiguous yes. Right? It's law, it's precedent, it's tax-free, great. Failing that, the next best situation is the one we have, where it's not an unambiguous no.
Right.
It depends, and there's certain things you should be aware of, and there's certain hoops you should jump through. But there's a case to be made. Not a case that I'm making. You and I are not tax advisors. We never give tax advice. But we work with some really good, legitimate cross-border experts. I'm not talking about these people who devise these crazy schemes. I'm talking about bona fide cross-border tax advisors and attorneys. They believe a case can be made.
Some of them have been previous guests on We're the Brits in America.
Absolutely. Go through our archives and gorge on UK and US tax.
I think, though, that's an important first piece, right? Is this idea of ambiguity is not going to go away. And it is inherent to the nature of being an expat in the States that barring a unambiguous, clear answer, how can we then approach this in a prudent, reasonable, valid way?
It comes down to the treaty. And in the treaty, there is a specific section that deals with retirement accounts in both countries. And there are a couple of articles in this treaty that deal with distributions, payments, income, lump sums paid from a retirement scheme organised in one country, i.e. the UK, where the member is now resident in another country, i.e. the US. The good news is both of these articles basically say if it's tax-free in the home country, the original country, then the new country will respect it. Which on the face of it, when a novice reads this, they think, great, it's unambiguous. It's tax-free in the UK, the US will respect that. Happy days, off I trot. The problem is both treaties contain something known as the savings clause.
The dreaded savings clause.
The dreaded savings clause, yeah. And the savings clause basically says, this is great, but if we want to override this, we can. I mean, it baffles me. Yeah. I mean, it literally baffles me. What is even the point in writing an article if in the next breath you say, But I can disregard that if I want to.
All this beautiful
Why not just
legalese that we've just laid out to you, forget that in this instance. We're going to override that.
Why not just don't have it in? If you can override it at your will and you choose to every single time, don't put it in the treaty.
It's like a handshake agreement.
Yeah, with you, I got your fingers crossed behind your back.
Yeah.
Why? But anyway, that's where we are. This is very common in US treaties. And incidentally, apparently the UK also have these and are now trying to enforce them. So that's changing for Americans going back to the UK, or Brits who now have American citizenship. Anyway, these two treaties, one of which can be overridden by the Savings Clause, one of which can't be overridden by the Savings Clause. And the key differential is whether it's a lump sum. Now, again, we're in danger of getting into specifics here. But under one reading of it, I think if it's a lump sum, then it absolutely falls into the one we don't want, and then it's taxable. But if you can argue it's an income, right? So then we get into it's so silly. It's called Pension Commencement Lump Sum. So on the face of it, you say, oh, it's absolutely a lump sum. Yeah, but actually, under the US technical definition of a lump sum distribution, it means an entire distribution, 100%. Oh, well, it's not that, so it's not lump sum. Great. Oh, well, the problem is the UK just came out with some guidance that says anything over 20% is a lump sum. Oh, so it's definitely a lump sum then. Yeah, but also, despite it being called Pension Commencement Lump Sum, you don't actually have to take it as a lump sum. You can take it as income. Wait, what? So, look, if anyone followed that word salad, the point is, it's not straightforward. It's not clear. It comes down to the technical definition of a lump sum. And even when something is called a lump sum, it might not be a lump sum, right? So,
and this is an active issue, right? I mean, I don't mean to kind of over-egg the pudding here, but that guidance that you referred to about HMRC's interpretation of lump sum, what is and what isn't, that's very recent, right? We're talking in the last year, I believe. So this is an active discussion that is ongoing and still, again, ambiguous.
Right, and you will have so look, if you didn't follow everything I just said, you don't need to. I'm trying to make the point that it's just crazy convoluted and tricky and in some respects daft, but that's what it comes down to when you're trying to apply the law or the reading of a treaty. The point is here, it is not clear. And if you go and talk to different tax advisors, right, here's my completely made up arbitrary percentages. 90% haven't got a clue what you're talking about and will give you bad advice if you ask them. Well, hopefully some of them would say, I don't know, go and speak to a professional. But most don't have a clue. Of the 10% who do understand, there are some who will just tell you outright it's taxable and you've got no options. There are some who will say, you can make a case. You can take a lump sum and it's tax-free, or you can take it as a part of a periodic payments and it could be tax-free. And you'll have some who will say, look, the lump sum is taxable, but if you take it as an income, you might be able to argue it's tax-free. So even within the 10% who do know, you're going to have wildly different interpretations and positions. And it's up to you to find someone who explains this to you, who gets you comfortable with whatever course of action you're going to take. And you understand that it's not a totally risk-free endeavor if you're going to take it as tax-free. But I would still argue that's better than an unequivocal no.
Right. The fact that the conversation can even be had, right? Because there is a world in which there was an unambiguous no, or, it is taxable, and then it's a moot point, right? So there is some, again, we keep going back to this idea of room for interpretation, ambiguity, even amongst professionals, tax professionals who operate specifically in this space. And that's the nature of being an expat in the States, right? And for us existing in this cross-border space, we know that that's not always a satisfactory answer, right? So all we can do is deliver that message and then talk about, okay, so if I am considering taking this, what should I be thinking about? What should I be doing? What's the actionable advice here? And I think the first one, I'm sure you'll say it, is to engage a cross-border qualified, in this case, US, UK tax professional, tax advisor.
This is why it's so important, right? So there's the whole, is it, isn't it? What should I do? What are the risks? Right? But if you're going to take it and you're going to claim that it's tax-free under the treaty, there are different ways you can do it. You can just take it and not declare anything. That would be a very bad way to do it, in my opinion. But I'm sure lots of people do that. If you work with a professional, though, after they've apprised you of the situation and your options as they see them, and you pick one, and if you are going to treat it as tax-free under the treaty, they can help you do so correctly. And that is of critical importance, because this has to be reported in certain places, the asset and the income, and you have to specifically claim on a form, I think it's 8833, you have to specifically claim a treaty exemption. You have to notify the IRS that you are taking a position based on an interpretation of the treaty that you believe allows you to claim this as tax-free. And if you do that, my understanding of it is, having spoken to many tax advisors, is that you, by meeting your obligations, by meeting the compliance obligations associated with this, as long as the rest of your return is in order, that's critical. You know, there could be other errors in your return, other things missing, but assuming that's not the case, you will be eligible for the statute of limitations. So the IRS will have 3, maybe in some circumstances 6, but usually 3 years with which to audit you, or to challenge this transaction, this treaty reading. And if they don't, my understanding of it is, after that 3 or occasionally 6 years, it's too late. Even if they do want to challenge it, they can't. Whereas, if you don't take these steps, if you don't fill in the necessary forms, if you don't actively claim a treaty exemption, if you don't put them on notice that you're doing this, that can be left open indefinitely, forever. So 10 years from now, if you did this and you didn't do it correctly, they can come at you for tax, and that's to be avoided.
This is such a critical piece of information. It's something that is often overlooked or just flat out misunderstood, right? Or misinterpreted. You need to file properly if there's a treaty position being taken, right? And if you don't, the ramifications can be enormous. And just to kind of draw a line under that, and we talk about this a lot, so you're probably sick of hearing us say it, but if you're heading into retirement, which I know a lot of our clients certainly are, a lot of the people we listen to, our audience, you do not want something like that hanging over you. You do not want a previous tax return from 10 years ago that in the event of an audit, and you have someone who is a stickler and who notices that there weren't the right forms filed, coming after you for positions that were taken like this and filed improperly. You do not want the threat of that hanging over your retirement. I mean, you know, you're talking about potential penalties, fines. To our understanding, if the treaty position isn't taken correctly, the IRS, in the event of an audit, essentially acts as if there is no treaty protection, right? So not only has it not been invoked correctly, it won't even be applied in the eyes of the IRS. Then you're in a position where you're having to argue with the IRS about what may or may not, you know, protection may or may not have existed at that time. So it is, like you say, Richard, to be avoided at all costs.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Do we have anything else to add on that?
I think just to sum up there, the kind of 3 takeaways, because I know we see it a lot, right? We get asked this question a lot, and we can feel sometimes the frustration or the resentment because there is not a clear answer.
The frustration is there's not a clear answer, and we always say there's not a clear answer. You have options, but you have to do this correctly. And I believe the only way you can do this correctly, the only way, is by working with a professional who understands this. And people don't want to hear that, because a good cross-border tax advisor costs a little bit of money. Not excessively so. It doesn't have to be excessive, but it is an investment. I have a good one. And a lot of the time people don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
They want to just know, yeah, it's tax-free and I can just take it and be done and it's all good.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that answer is one that we'll never get from us.
Yep. I think that's key, right? Is a good tax advisor, in our view, is worth their weight in gold. You're going to get a lot more value out of doing things the proper way and closing off the potential, you know, penalties, fines, added tax down the line that exists. So that's kind of step 1, right? Actionable advice. Work with a cross-border tax advisor. We work with a plethora of great ones that our clients, you know, engage, some of whom have been on the podcast. Number 2, if you're taking the position, understand the risks, right? Have a solid understanding. You don't need to know all the technicals, but understand if there are risks to taking that position. What are they, right? What are the possible after effects? And then number 3, ensure you're doing that properly, right? With a cross-border tax advisor, they're going to be able to direct you on that. But again, there's a lot of misunderstandings when it comes to just ignoring the steps that need to be taken if you're taking a treaty position.
Yeah. Jolly good. Well said, James. Thank you. Right. Well, I alluded at the start that this was going to be the last focused. We're still going to do podcasts on Brits, but what is coming is in January we are relaunching this podcast under a new name that I won't share just yet, and we're also going weekly, as currently we're bi-weekly, which I'm sure everyone listening is tremendously excited about, and we are widening the scope. I've really enjoyed this podcasting journey. I've met some really great people. I've learned some really good stuff, and I just want to I want to expand it a little bit. I love working with expats in America. Most of our clients are Brits, but we do encounter other expats, and I think there's an opportunity to get more of this out there to people. So we'll still be very, very British focused, but we are widening the scope slightly, and we wanted to crown We're the Brits in America with the most asked about issue, which is my 25% PCLS tax-free cash tax-free in America? And the answer is, it depends.
Maybe. It is the number one question, though. And just to there will be a lot more coming down the pike about the expansion. We get asked all the time about, could you help with this? Either Americans leaving America or other expats who are dealing with the U.S. tax system. So there is we recognize there's a demand there, and it's really difficult to find good information, good knowledge, good data, good content in that direction. So we want to do what we can to meet the needs there of the audience.
Absolutely. And I should just note as well, there's a slight change as we go through this transition. There's going to be a slight change to the scheduling in December. So I don't know how surprised everyone is, but there is a kind of an exodus going on right now of Americans heading to Europe, amongst other places. And I actually, earlier in the year, I recorded a series on called Move to Europe, and I met with a few really great cross-border advisors that I know in Europe who are catering to this. So I thought we're going to put out, I think it's 3 or 4 podcasts under this Move to Europe series. So this is mainly targeted at Americans looking to move to Europe, which actually includes lots of expats.
Mm.
Most of our clients who return to the UK and Europe have gone back as American citizens.
Mm.
So all of this applies to them as well. So if anyone listening to this thinks that they could one day end up in Europe, then this series is for you. And then we will be back on the 7th of January with our first From the Trenches under the new regime.
Excellent. Excited.
Yeah, very good. Pick a mix. Should we talk about what we're reading, consuming, listening to, etc.?
Let's do it.
You want to go first?
Eric Larson. A name that has been...
Our friend Eric Larson.
Back to Eric Larson, a name that has been mentioned many, many times. There's something about, I'll say, this time of year, the fall coming in, winter sort of around the corner, where I start to read early 20th century / late 19th century history books. I don't know what the connection is there, but it just feels like it fits the mood and the vibe. I read I think it's one of his earlier books called Thunderstruck. That's about.
You've read loads of Ian.
I've read a lot of his. Yeah. I think I probably, I don't know if I've read every single one, but a lot of them. This one is about the invention of essentially the radio, wireless telegraphy. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but Marconi, the Italian who came up with wireless transmissions. Larson uses his classic formula of sort of paralleling 2 stories that at first seem very much unconnected, but then you start to see how they sort of intertwine over the course of 5, 10, 15 years. Fascinating read, highly recommended. Really enjoy getting to know, how all that came about. And something that I found interesting, Marconi himself wasn't a scientist. He wasn't a physicist, and he was open to that and talked about it, and really just found out how to transmit and receive these, what would turn out to be Hertz waves, right? Radio waves, through trial and error, through sheer sort of force of will. And it helps that he came from a very wealthy family, which always, as these things do, but a really fascinating journey. If you've read any Eric Larson's, you'll be very comfortable and enjoy Thunderstruck as well.
Okay, well, I'll check that out because I love Eric Larson books, and that sounds like an interesting story that I know nothing about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't know a thing going into it.
I'm reading Ian Kershaw's. Ian Kershaw is a biographer of Hitler, and 10 years ago I read. He's done two books on Hitler. The first one's called Hubris. It's about the rise to power, and the second one I can't remember what it's called. and then there's an abridged, there's a version where it's like a condensed version. I mean, it's still a tome, but it covers the whole of both books. And I read the condensed one that covers the hubris and the second book about a decade ago, and it was incredible. And then I'm listening to the Rest is History podcast, which is fantastic. I absolutely love it. And they did this whole series on the rise of the Nazi Party and then Hitler's rise to power, and they went all the way back to Bismarck's time, like late 19th century, and the roots of German nationalism there. And it was so fascinating, right through to him being appointed chancellor and then their basically seizure of power. And they quoted the initial biography, The Hubris, the first book of Ian Kershaw. So I've gone back and I've picked up that book and I've read it, and it's like 1920 or 1900 to 1938 or something. The detail it goes into in this period is staggering, and it's so interesting. It's kind of terrifying. It's really kind of terrifying. I'm at the point where they've just appointed Hitler to power as chancellor, which obviously I knew all about. I knew the right, but how much the hubris they had in just thinking they could control him, and then within 4 or 5 months he basically had an iron grip on the country. It's crazy, and I'm really, really enjoying that book. And that ties my other recommendation, which is Goal Hanger Podcast. This is Gary Lineker's production company in the UK. They have like a family of podcasts. The Rest is History, The Rest is Politics, The Rest is Politics US. We have Ways of Making You Talk, History, Politics, and I'm just getting into all their podcasts, frankly, and that's led me to this book. So kind of a full circle moment.
I have to check it out. I'm sure too. Reading it now has a different different feel to it.
Yeah.
How do you find the time to listen to all these podcasts?
I do a lot of dog walking.
Dog walks, nice. That's good.
Yeah, to supplement my income.
Yeah,
I don't actually have a dog.
I'm joking. Everyone. Knocking on doors.
I have my own dog. Yes, yeah. I'm getting very busy with work and kids, but I do find time to walk my dog. So I will listen to a podcast when I'm walking the dog. I'll listen to a podcast when I'm driving anywhere, picking the kids up from school. I'll also often listen to podcasts around the house, my earphones. I listen to when I'm exercising. I truly love podcasts.
Yeah.
I've got to tell you.
I'm a big listener as well, and I'm sure we have a lot in the audience right now who are driving and walking a dog and exercising, and so we always appreciate the listen. So we should say, right, follow us wherever you find podcasts. This podcast is not going anywhere, right? Let's just reiterate that. You'll still get the same subscription, still get the episodes. You'll see the new branding and things in January, which we are very excited about. And if anyone has multiple dogs or finds they have dog walks without podcasts, they'll be happy to know that we're going weekly now. So you'll have double the content from us. And we're really excited for the new beginning, so to speak.
We're also going it more on YouTube because that's where it's all at right now. But I remain I'm an audio podcast guy.
Yeah. Me
I don't watch podcasts on YouTube, but we're playing that game now, and I'm excited to play that game. We're getting a lot more attention on there, I should say. So we're excited to do that. But I'm an audio podcast lover at heart.
Me too. Good. Well, thank you all for listening. We'll see you under the new umbrella.
Thank you, everyone. James and I will see you in the new year. In the meantime, between now and then, we have the pre-recorded Move to Europe series, which I hope you enjoy. And James and I will see you in January. Bye.